and the drivers were not from here, and they said that they were taking back roads and from the ambulance, but they got them there quickly and got them back. And the mother said that she had told me that she said that she was just devastated, not knowing, was her baby okay? But, once she got there and she saw us, that we had just loved her baby like she would have if it had been with her, the relief just was all over her face.
One of the patients I took care of told me that she managed to get here from Slider. Somehow she had heard that Memorial Hospital had remained open, and she had gone into labor, and she decided to come here. So we took care of her.
This was a place that people had some sense that if we show up, they'll take care of us.
I saw too many people from the community that this was like their beacon. It was like they were getting here no matter what. However, they might have been hurt, or they might just have lost their house. They didn't have no place to go.
We got a phone call on the command post that a family was trying to get in the door back by radiology on the north side of the building. So several of us ran back to find out what was going on. And it was a little family of about 5 people who spoke very little English and just kept saying that the roof had already blown off of their house. And they were coming here because they didn't have anywhere else to go and they couldn't get anywhere else. So we brought them in and put them in what was later going to be the village.
It was like a flood, an influx of people from the community coming to us, not knowing where else to go, I guess. They lost their homes on the beach or lost where they were staying and just started coming to the hospital. It was like, and we started trying to organize that, funnel them into the food court area and try to set up tables, and then they started needing assistance. They were cold and wet, and tried to get them some blankets and stuff, to just try to help them a little bit.
And we started getting so many people. I think we might have got 150, 200 people in, and it was happening so fast.
One of the things we began to realize in the immediate aftermath was that the residents were coming to our facility just seeking shelter, food, water, clothing. Fortunately, we had a unfinished food court area in the hospital that we were able to dedicate to that shelter operation. It became known as the Village. As the aftermath continued and patients continued to show up, we began to realize that we were discharging patients that no longer had homes, no longer had any caregivers to care for them, no longer had any form of transportation. So we began to discharge those patients into the Village area, and we would continue to care for them until we could get them to an appropriate shelter.
When I got downstairs and started seeing all these people, they were wet, they were with their kids, they were just kind of blank.
Most of them were very, very shook up inside, but they seemed to really come to grips with things that it's got to get better because we're at the bottom.
They needed comforting, emotional care, emotional support, and the love that my fellow nurses and the other staff at Memorial provided to these people.
I'd go around to the tables and see if they needed anything, or if they wanted. We had sandwiches. We had so much. We had water and juice and sandwiches. The cafeteria, we'd go get coffee and bring up coffee pots so they could have coffee, and they just wanted somebody to talk to. They just wanted somebody. They were scared, like I said. They were really frightened, and they just wanted somebody to talk to them.
It was heart-wrenching to see some of those people and the serious needs that they had as they came in through the hospital. They were on oxygen at home and they had run out. Their medicines were washed away and they obviously couldn't get those. There were no pharmacies open or anything like that, and so we set up a makeshift pharmacy.
Because most pharmacies were not open or they were destroyed, we dispensed 3 days worth of medications to patients to get them through that time until they could get to a pharmacy or to a pharmacy that was open. I don't know of any other hospital that did that.
We had
Coast Guard and National Guard helicopters landing with bottles of medications from people that were stranded to fill so they could go back and deliver and give them food and water along with their medications.
We set up a table because patients started coming in needing oxygen. Their own tanks at home were running low, and of course, to run a compressor you have to have electricity, and the power was off. And so their little portable tanks were running low, and so, patients were coming in, one right after another, needing oxygen.
We had no way of communicating with anybody. I mean, that was, to me, the worst part of the whole post-Katrina thing, was we had no communication.
Cell phones didn't work, and of course we didn't have the phones that worked in the hospital. So you had no touch with your family.
And my last communication was my son telling me that my roof was lifting and my daughter's ceiling was falling in, and that was my last communication with my children. And so for 2 days I didn't know if they were dead or alive or what.
I called my mother, who lives in Canada, Tuesday morning. It was the only time I got through for about a 3-minute period. I borrowed somebody's cell phone because mine wouldn't go through, and her cell phone went through, and she said that my husband had just called her. He didn't know how I was, but he was on his way to come and see whether we were still here and what was going on. And so I knew he was okay.
I stopped asking, are you okay, or how's your home, or all that. By Monday night, Tuesday morning, the only question when you saw somebody was, where's your family and are they okay?
Maybe about the third day after, text messages were starting to come in.
2 weeks, when the phone come back, about 2 weeks. Yeah. They drive me crazy.
What amazed me through the immediate aftermath of the hurricane is how everyone came to work. They might not have a house, they might not have a car, but they showed up for work. We couldn't get out, people couldn't call in, but everyone that was scheduled came to work.
And they were reporting to work, and these employees had no homes, but they were coming to work to take care of the patients at Memorial Hospital.
It took me about almost 2 hours to get here. That was going through yards and debris and everything. Well, I ended up with 4 flat tires, but I made it.
A lot of the staff members were walking in here with a muddy t-shirt and a pair of jeans on their back, and that's all they had to their name. And some of them didn't even have a name tag. I would have to go down and identify them to get them in here.
One of my nurses, him and his wife swam the whole night, and then I can't remember if it was 24 hours afterwards, but I remember him and his wife coming to the unit and him standing in front of me and saying, I'm here to report to work,
One of the male RNs came to help me with some personal things a couple times throughout my course of my stay here. And that guy swam out of his house. And he came here. And he had nothing left.
Do you know how many people were coming to work without a home to go home to, and not knowing if their siblings were alive or not, coming into work day after day, and the administrators that had no home themselves were coming into work and here day after day.
It was amazing how the people were able to hold up. I mean, they'd come in saying they've lost their house, they've lost their roof, they've lost everything in their house, and just keep going,
And we have 2 nurses that work with us. One's family was in Bay St. Louis, and we heard that everybody was dead. So, I don't know how he did it, but he stayed. And he helped. I don't know, when do you cross the line from being a nurse and being a father and a husband? But he stayed.
Most everybody there that day, everybody was just there for one another.
Several
of my coworkers lost everything like I did. And we would kind of take turns being strong and breaking down. And we'd kind of hold each other's hand and give each other a hug and get through it day after day. And I have really a lot of respect for them. It's an incredible bunch of people.
You know, it's like we are walking through a disaster movie. This is like a movie, but we're living it. You know, it's actually happening. And it was a sense of, something that wasn't real.
The first couple days, everybody's pretty much in a state of shock, and sometimes you would see people that were working 24/7 and appearing to be somewhat, what I call normal, which at that time, I don't know how they did that, but they kind of just go into a autopilot mode, I guess.
We just had a list of who was sleeping where, and one of us would sit up and the command post or the nursing floor would call us and say, we need Dr. So-and-so, and we would go wake him up, and he'd go down to the ER, and he'd go up, to the patient rooms, whatever the problem was, because it was just no other way, to do it.
Adrenaline. I think that's what keeps you going when you have nothing left to give. So, you see helicopter lights, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you see this spotlight come down on you, and you think, okay, here we go again. And you get up and you get it done, and then after you're done, you sit still for a minute. And then you hear AMR in the distance, lights and sirens. You get pumped up again. I think your adrenaline after something like this is the only thing that can keep you going.
We had not enough electricity to run the air conditioner, had our pants rolled up. We were in flip-flops, T-shirts, tank tops, it didn't matter. And I walked in one of my nurses, Mary, and the doctor were fixing to do a procedure. And so here's Mary gowned up and got her mask on, and in the back she's got her shorts and her T-shirt and her flip-flops on doing a nursing procedure. And we got the biggest kick out of that because I said, see, we can nurse in blue jeans and tennis shoes,
Because we all laughed together, and we all cried together, and we all worked together, and we all survived together.
And I think that when the DMAT team showed up, that was certainly a sight for sore eyes, because that was the first time we felt like we weren't here on our own.
Thank God for the volunteers from all over the country that they were able to help out.
Most amazing to me was the volunteers that were coming to the hospital, the physicians, nursing staff. I mean, we had people walking up to our front desk saying, I want to help. How can I help? I'm a nurse. I'm a physician.
People were coming from everywhere, and to me, that's what touches me the most.
We were needing to transition back into the department to do case management, and Kathy was like, where am I going to find people? Where am I going to find staff? And, struggling, and out of the blue, these 2 women walked up to me and said, I was out in the lobby area of the hospital by the parking garage, and we're nurses from Tennessee. We have our driver's license and our nurse's license. What can we do to help? They dropped from heaven.
And one man that came up and spoke to us said he was from Florida, and he said, we may not have been some of the people that helped them, but they were paying back for the help that they received, like the year before and before that. They just felt they couldn't just sit by. They were returning the favor.
And employees' husbands and family members would come and say, I'll be a volunteer.
At about 1 o'clock in the morning, Wednesday morning, a fuel relay switch failed on one of our standby generators, which caused us to lose all power in the building.
I was sleeping in the parenting room with another nurse, and I heard the power flick and it come back on. And then I heard the power flick and it come back on. And then I heard the power flick and it didn't come back on. I was like, oh no.
The lights weren't out very long. They were really only out for about 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is a long time when you're trying to provide patient care. We delivered a baby while the lights were out. We had an orthopedic case going on. We had babies on ventilators, adults on ventilators.
We had no electricity. Nobody had flashlights. People had cell phones. So we knew we had to get to the unit, so we made a chain of hands and made our way to the door. Then we hollered, 5 go to the 5th floor ICU, 5 go to the NICU, and 5 go to the 2nd floor, however how many. And as we got to each floor, 5 went to there, 4 went there, and we went into the units.
And each individual person, professional, took a baby to watch and to make sure that they were doing okay during the power outage. And it was like people didn't have to talk. They knew what to do and they just did it and took care of the babies or they would have died.
Tuesday, we were doing a case, bilateral broken legs, bilateral fractured femurs, tree cutter for, I believe, the power company. And that's the night that the power went out. We did surgery by flashlight that night.
The x-ray tech comes in and he's walking by and he looks down at me and he says, "You're the flashlight guy." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You're the flashlight guy. You're the one that they did surgery by flashlight."
Well, everyone in the blood bank, everyone in the laboratory, there must have been about 40 people there. They woke everybody up and everyone came running with every ice chest that we could come up with in the laboratory. And we had to get all the cold packs and everything we could out of any freezer that we had.
Again, it was a team effort. Just about everybody came in that blood bank to see what we could do, you know, to keep the blood from ruining.
So the power did go out about 2 in the morning. And I just remember being in the hallway and I had 4 doors open, you know, because everything's black around us and everything, no lights anywhere. And I had this little pen light in the hallway and it provided just enough light to illuminate the room so that the people at least would know, you know, have a little orientation, so to speak.
But this storm affected so many people, just so many people, it really is. And the devastation was just all over. I've never witnessed anything like it.
The next day, I guess it would have been Tuesday, we was able to, you know, sunshine and everything, we was able to see, and we're up there on the 5th floor, and of course we got our binoculars up there, and we could look and see the copa had moved and the damage that was done to the grand. And we could see Hancock Bank with its windows blown out, the church.
And when I saw the beach after the storm, it almost made me cry. To just see that everything was gone. I mean, there's nothing left on 90.
You know, I called him and told him, everything's gone. Okay, no, you don't understand. Everything is gone. There's nothing on the beach from Bay St. Louis to the Ocean Spring Bridge. There is nothing.
I think what gets me most is just it's a slab of concrete. You don't see a building, you don't see trees, you don't see street signs, stoplights. It's like I don't know, like a wasteland.
Just everything was gone. You know, landmarks, you drive down the beach for a little ways where you've driven for years. You know, I've lived on the coast my whole life, and all of a sudden you didn't know where you were because the landmarks were gone. You knew where you should be, but you weren't sure if that's where you were.
It's just incredible devastation that I can hardly imagine. It's almost like how the city of Seoul looked after the war.
I went out on Tuesday morning with security looking for somebody who was unaccounted for. And we went down off Courthouse Road and just the closest I could come to an analogy was the pictures after Hiroshima. I mean, nothing left standing.
There was no house, you know, just, you know, there was no neighborhood. There's no neighborhood left. There's half the town is gone.
So August 30th, I went to the neighborhood, check my property, but I could not find anything. everything gone.
I think it was 2 to 3 days that I took my opportunity to leave, and I didn't recognize where I used to live.
I had difficulty even locating the place where the house was.
We caught a ride with them back to the hospital. And the only thing we had was what was on our backs. There was nothing left of the house, and we went around the front of it. We have a back wall, and the carport was still standing.
I live in Pass Christian, Timber Ridge. My house is built up 16 feet off the ground, well, 16 foot above sea level, and I had 9 foot and 4 inches of water in my house.
I found my roof, but I couldn't find the house.
I felt guilty that I had a structure when so many of these people had nothing to go home to. And I think that a lot of people felt like that.
You know, you lose everything they own, and you're like, well, okay, I still have my memories. I've got my children. You know, my family's okay.
It wasn't quite as festive as most Christmases have been in the past, but I have to pat my kids on the back because they're really great. They're understanding, and they know that Mom and Dad are trying real hard to just get us a place to stay and try to rebuild there instead of running out for a toy. Or
a little over 400 of our employees lost their homes to Hurricane Katrina, and over 40 of our medical staff members lost their homes.
The hospital provided places for them to stay. They were able to stay in empty rooms if possible. They could go shower. They even provided a washing machine and dryer.
The hospital became a pharmacy for the community and a gas station for the employees and a laundromat for the employees and a shelter for those who needed it.
It's really great the way Memorial treats their employees. They really took care of us during the storm. Memorial became its own little city during the storm. They put wash machines and dryers in for staff that didn't have homes anymore. We had the pod, the point of distribution, that we gave clothing and food and diapers, and they had their own pharmacy. Just anything that you needed to go out for, Memorial became it.
I came and helped them sort clothes and get toys all lined up for a week.
There was a gas station back here behind the hospital, and they got the employees gas, which was a big help for people that had to go out and go back to their houses and come back in. It was a big, immense help by them doing that.
Everything that we needed as employees or asked for, they've provided. They've got us aid from donations that people send in. They've added it to our checks, supplies. The hospital in North Carolina or South Carolina, they've adopted us and bought Christmas presents for people that requested them, and you know, you can't ask for anything more than that.
They really gave me this, so I'm happy. I'm very happy. After all the things I went through this year, I'm very happy. And I thank Blue Ridge. I thank y'all very much. It's really nice. Isn't it pretty?
Indiana came down here and was doing a lot of counseling with people after the fact. And in fact, the people out in the DMAT trailer was offering to do counseling, you know, post-traumatic counseling or crisis intervention. And I think that's important.
It's just an example of every thought went into what can we do to help our patients, our staff, and people in the community.
I'm now doing the information center. It's a Memorial Medical Information Line, and it's a phone number that's advertised in the paper and on the TV for people to call if they have questions. In the early stages, it was people calling saying, where do I find a shelter? Where do I find points of distribution? Where do I get help? How do I find FEMA and Red Cross?
Of course, after the storm,
people didn't know how to contact their physician or how to get in touch with any doctor for that matter, or they perhaps were out of medicine and they didn't know how to get in touch with somebody to get medication. So they would call, got all sorts of questions, not strictly about where their doctor might be located, but just a number of questions where some of the medical clinics were located, or if a particular doctor was back in operation, or just all sorts of questions.